Alright, so this time, Batman Forever. We're dealing with actual comic book movies now, not just, a movie that falls under the sci-fi fantasy genre umbrella. Batman Forever, directed by Joel Schumacher, released, I think, 1996? That sounds right. So you know what? We're sticking with it. So, a little bit about this movie. Tim Burton had directed the previous two Batman movies, Batman 1989 and Batman Forever. No, scratch that. Really scratch that. Batman 1989 and Batman Returns. Batman 89 is the one that's relevant to this conversation, but after Batman Returns, Warner Brothers studio execs basically said, don't come back for another film, because it was just too dark. They wanted to sell to kids. And for two movies now, Burton had done the opposite, just barely complying with giving enough gadgets for them to make toys out of. But anyway, enter Joel Schumacher, that wonderful man. I actually don't know literally anything else from his filmography, but the movie he ended up making was incredible, and that's what I'm here to talk about. I was most definitely not old enough to watch it in theaters when it first came out. I would only be old enough like a decade later to even see it. But when I was a kid, I used to watch it a lot. It was one of my favorite movies, even though I understood none of it, Absolutely none of it. And it was one of the few movies that I didn't just loop one scene over and over and over. I watched the whole thing, which for my hyper-focused brain was odd. It was a first, but like the whole movie was incredible. In it, you have two villains, Two-Face and Riddler. Now, Two-Face is the, big dog, the dragon, if you will. He's like the muscle. But Riddler is the one with the much more meaningful character and the one with the plan, the one with the base, the one with all the massive menace. Two-Face is second fiddle. And both were played by very high-profile actors. Tommy Lee Jones for Two-Face and Jim Carrey for Riddler. And something else is that even though it is technically a continuation of the movies with, what's the name? Michael Keaton as Batman, they recast Val Kilmer as Bruce Wayne / Batman, but they kept Commissioner Gordon, they kept Alfred, a few miscellaneous others, I'm sure. But Schumacher and crew definitely wanted to make a continuation of that story, especially considering that Batman was not the Batman that comics fans would recognize. The Batman of Tim Burton's movies was a vengeful killer. He didn't have the one rule. The only reason he didn't kill both main villains of Batman Returns was because Catwoman didn't give him the chance. And it's been a while since I saw Returns, but I think Penguin also dies on his own. Anyway, that's not relevant. Now we come to Batman Forever, where Two-Face has already had his origin story off screen. That's a thing. So the original cut would have started with him breaking out of Arkham. Now you're going to hear me talking about the original cut and the final cut, because both of those are incredibly important to the story at hand. But anyway, that is merely implied in the final cut. And the movie's opening with him, and we're also introduced to Edward Nygma, the future Riddler, who is obsessed with Bruce Wayne and fixates on him so highly, even when he's being just brushed aside because he's absolutely insane and wants to control human brainwaves. And Bruce Wayne definitely has some problems with that. So, after what we can assume is years and years of just being broken down, beaten by absolutely everyone, tossed aside, not wanted, not needed, he snaps, goes and builds this mind control, thought harvesting machine on his own, and takes it out first on his overseer, and then goes into business as the Riddler, leaving riddles for Bruce Wayne, not knowing that he's Batman. Of course, Two-Face is on the loose, so the two run into each other, they team up, and they both realize they have something in common. An obsession with killing the same person, though they don't know it. Two-Face wants to kill Batman, and Riddler wants to kill Bruce Wayne. And both of them are obsessed with their respective enemies. That's why they're doing this, because there is another important character, Dr. Chase Meridian, who's your standard, like, damsel in distress, but she is also a very helpful character to Bruce and to us, the audience, for helping understand these villains and to help understand Bruce. She states it quite clearly. An unhealthy obsession where the only escape is to purge the fixation, and Bruce finishes the thought to kill their fixation. Harvey Dent, Two-Face, is obsessed with Batman. The Riddler is obsessed with Bruce Wayne. Now, something else to point out is the existence of Robin, but we're gonna get to him later, hopefully, if I can remember that. I have notes this time, so good job, me. They're not very well organized, and it's just a little handheld notebook page, but oh well. So, we go through the movie. Bruce Wayne has some hidden trauma that he needs to get over, and some of that has to do with the fact that he has a conscience. He has trouble with killing people. He can't do it, especially not after killing the Joker and finding that it didn't relieve his pain. It didn't make him whole again. His vengeance was empty, and now he's left with no choice but to keep being Batman, to get temporary release every night, taking his rage out on Gotham's criminals. So, eventually things come to a head. Riddler finds out that Bruce Wayne and Batman are the same person, and that he and Two-Face have had the same goal this entire time. He becomes a big business emperor of a tech company to rival Wayne Enterprises, which was very important to him since he wanted to be Bruce Wayne. He was obsessed with him. He wanted to kill him. He wanted to replace him. So, he does that, and he and Two-Face raid Wayne Manor. They capture Dr. Meridian, the love interest. They wreck the Batcave, shoot Bruce in the head, though it only grazes his forehead. Otherwise, there wouldn't be an end to the film. And then he has to go with Robin and rescue Chase, stop the bad guys, save the day. But while he's there, Riddler has a good question for him. Can Bruce Wayne and Batman ever truly exist? And he wants to demonstrate this. He wants to prove this to his target of obsession. He wants to prove that they can't, but he can. He is better. He can be Bruce Wayne, and he can be a better alter ego, a better, I guess, Batman. But of course, we see that Bruce Wayne and Batman can coexist, because when Riddler dangles both Dr. Meridian and Robin's lives in front of him, he finds a way to save both. Yeah, so there we are. And then we are presented with Edward finally getting his wish. He has become Bruce Wayne. He has become Batman in his own delusional mind, trapped in this incomplete sort of mental map of Bruce Wayne's traumatized, broken state. And his part in the film ends with him locked up in Arkham, screaming that he knows the identity of Batman. Dr. Meridian goes to visit him, and that's when he reveals he is Batman, and he starts flapping his straitjacket sleeves like wings and screaming. He got what he wanted all along. He has become his idol. Okay. It was a very visually striking movie. That's probably why I loved every scene so much, because just constantly this feels like it's like an amusement park and a city at the same time. And the wonderful part is, as you get older, you realize that it's not to the detriment of any of the characters or the plot. It can do both. It can be goofy and lighthearted and absolutely gorgeous, delicious. You want to eat this environment up, this thing with these huge monolith statues built into the side of skyscrapers and waterfalls running into a city, and just hidden mines and back alley mazes and walls you can drive on. Just everything about this city, Gotham, is amazing, and you wouldn't want to live there, but just like you want to look at it. And not only that, but that extends to all the heroes and villains as well. You want to drive the Batmobile. You want to be in the Batsuit. It's all these cool gadgets and stuff, and you want to be the Riddler. You want to be Two-Face. You want to be the goon who has all the piercings and the gimp mask and the yin-yang icon everywhere. Because, yeah, Two-Face. Absolutely visually amazing film. And it was colorful. Whereas Tim Burton was really dark and cold and gothic, Schumacher brings life. It brings wonder. It looks like a cartoon with people living inside it. It's kind of like, what's the name of that detective movie? The really goofy one. Oh, Dick Tracy. That's the one. That was a movie that was released a few years later by, I think, Warner, the same company. And I think someone was trying to redo what happened with Batman Forever and later Batman and Robin. But amazing film, and it's its own world. You get sucked in so naturally. And as a kid, it's wonderful, and as a young adult, it's still wonderful. But so let's move on to characters, because the city, Gotham, it is a character, but the characters are also characters. So I'm going to go in, I guess, backwards order. We're going to start with Two-Face. Two-Face is, of course, played by Tommy Lee Jones, as established earlier, and he's not comic accurate. He's a maniac through and through, and he thinly veils his desire to just give in to the left half, the right brain, I guess you could say. The entire movie, he screams, he stamps his foot, he hits things, he dances around wildly. So, yeah, and my headcanon is that Tommy Lee Jones did not give a bad performance. He did not want to, just be this babbling lunatic that would play second fiddle to a much more legitimate threat that would just be there for like kind of a goofy villain kids could understand. Okay, maybe he did, but like, there's a reason. Both Two-Face and Riddler are slightly altered from their comic counterparts, their original characters, in some very core ways, but it's almost so subtle that you can understand the critics who say these are not the characters. The Riddler's just a Joker copy, Two-Face is just a Joker copy. Well, maybe, but no, shut up. So here's the thing. My headcanon is that Harvey Dent, Two-Face, gave in to his dark side, the deformed side, and now, though he claims to be of two minds, though he calls himself we and us, he's completely gone. Only Two-Face remains. And of course, Two-Face is the side of him that isn't cold and collected, and we actually have that subverted in the opening minutes of the film, the final cut, with him in it, where he gives a very silent, well, not silent, but quiet monologue about what it all means to this guard he's got tied up on the ground, and then the camera's been focusing on the Tommy Lee Jones side of his face, but then he like kneels over the captured guard and he turns his head and the camera follows him and he just says, "Lock!" And from that point on, he's like all the bad side, all of it. Just, he is that, and that is him. He has given in to one side of himself completely, and considering the context of this movie, that makes him an even better villain. Because the thing about Batman villains is that they represent the dark potential in the Dark Knight, things he can become, things he fights with all the time. This movie, its core themes are very much about Batman and Bruce Wayne. Who is he between them? And so Two-Face has become this dragon to the Riddler because he has given himself over completely to one side of himself, the same way Bruce Wayne give himself over completely to Batman. But as you see throughout the movie, he doesn't, and that's why he wins. And the Riddler, over time, also gives in to his alter ego, his other self. He is no longer Edward Nygma by the end, and then in the end, he is no longer Bruce Wayne. He doesn't want to become Bruce Wayne because he's become Batman. He has been lost to one side of the person he wanted to be. And he's stuck with this trauma that Bruce Wayne has because he absorbed some of his brainwaves through his machine. He is stuck with this haunting image of a bat coming in, swooping in during Bruce's darkest hour as a child, shortly after his parents' funeral. And he is frozen in that state of mind forever, babbling at Arkham until he dies. That's what the movie leaves us with. Yeah. He is also, of course, slightly different from his comic counterpart because he's so wacky. Not only that, but he has a personal obsession with Bruce Wayne. Why? Why does he do that? In the comics, he's supposed to be this like cold, calculating figure, and Batman is just an obstacle. It's another riddle. Of course, that's the case here too. Bruce Wayne is the riddle, and Batman is the answer. And the movie is him going through this development of like shedding Edward Nygma entirely and giving himself over to the Riddler in an attempt to prove that he can become Batman, that he can become better than Batman. But of course, he doesn't, because he loses. He ends up absorbing too much input from his own machine in the final minutes of the climax of the film. And then we get to Arkham. Yeah, that's where it is. Okay. Another really important character in the film is Robin, who we're going to detract here for a moment. He is Bruce Wayne's younger self. He is so close to becoming who Bruce Wayne didn't want to be, which is the vengeful killer. And so Bruce spends a lot of the movie trying to steer him away from that. In this movie, Two-Face murders the Flying Graysons except for Dick. Yes, his name is Dick. Get over it. But, yeah. Anyway, with that, we know that Batman has had a hole in him ever since he murdered the Joker, throwing him from that bell tower in Batman 1989. He doesn't want to be that person anymore, which I think is a great parallel to Warner not wanting Batman to have that image anymore. But anyway, back to Robin himself. He's the ray of light. He's the Robin to Batman's, well, Bat. In having someone he can steer in the right direction, Batman has a new reason to fight, a new reason to be a better Batman. And that is his newfound apprentice, who he first has to fight to even keep at Wayne Manor, because Dick, he just wants to go off, find Two-Face, kill him. Bruce knows what it's like, because that was him at first, when he first was Batman. And he says, no, I don't want you to do this. You are going to stay here, you're going to move on, you're gonna go to college, I'm going to help you, you are going to find a new place in life, you're going to forget about him, you're not going to kill people, you're not going to have to go out and torture yourself every night finding new people to beat up. Of course, as you could have guessed, a lot of Batman, a lot of Robin, his character is just there to express more shades to Batman's already pretty darn complex character arc in this movie, because Batman Forever was kind of the silly one of the 4 Batman movies. Of course, it's still not as silly as Batman and Robin, but it had a reputation as being much sillier than Burton's movies, even though really they were just about as silly as one another. The difference here, though, is that, it's deep, it has a meaning. Whereas Tim Burton was just stylistically dark, Batman Forever it's really this deep exploration of what it means to be Batman. Why does he do this? Why can't he stop? Why does he have to keep going? What reason does he have to do this? And, of course that brings us to Bruce Wayne, our protagonist. He has, a lot going on in this movie. He has some survivor's guilt, which is only resolved when he finds his father's journal and realizes that it wasn't his idea to go to the theater where they died. It was his parents. That forces him to shed his survivor's guilt, his delusion that it was somehow his fault, and embrace this idea that he is not deserving of paying the price that he is as Batman. This constant misery, this constant loneliness, the physical, emotional pain. He can be better if he lets himself. And of course, there's the whole idea of just, the rest of it, the whole idea of coexistence of multiple people. Sometimes in the movie, I think this was a great detail, but sometimes you can hear Bruce Wayne in the Batman suit, and sometimes you can hear Batman while Bruce is in his glasses and tuxedo. And it's a great little detail. In fact, when I rewatched Batman Forever for the first time recently, I thought him accidentally switching to his Batman voice in front of Edward Nygma is what revealed his identity. But no, it was a brain scan that he accidentally had done on him while at this gala for Edward's new machine, which he had turned into a television add-on and sold and got really Steve Jobs with. But yeah, anyway, I swear I had more here. Yeah, a lot of the footage was cut from the final cut, so here's where I'm going to transition to the deleted scenes, which were shot for the film, but were not edited in. They were not even mastered to match the rest of the film, which, considering the level of quality the final movie had, is not surprising. But that was probably corporate interference that kind of did that. Removed all the really deep introspective stuff, which worked its way into fan edits, including one I found online a few months ago called the virtual work print. I don't know what insane person edited these deleted scenes into the final product, but I think they did a really good job, especially with the vintage version, which it lowers the quality of the rest of the film quality, adds sound effects and music, and I think maybe a bit of actual mastering to the deleted scenes, slightly reorders scenes from the original cut. Unfortunately, it cuts out some of the more entertaining, one-liners and quips and stuff, like the onlooker going, "Batman! Ah!" Basically in that tone of voice. I'm tired, but that's basically what he sounded like. And then there's a few others, but these deleted scenes worked their way into the movie, and I watched it, I downloaded it. It's powerful. There's a lot of Batcave scenes where it's just Bruce Wayne sitting at this main chair. You know how the Batcave has this main chair where he sits and does all his investigating, all his analyses. But anyway, he's talking with Alfred and about what Batman means to him, and then that's when he suddenly has this realization and turns to Alfred and says, "If that's true, then Batman is my enemy." And that's just, it's deep, you know? He's realizing, yes, this person I make myself into is my own worst enemy. I keep bringing myself back to this place of pain where I have to take it out on other people in order to keep myself alive. And that's not right. It's going to kill me. But eventually, there's another deleted scene, which I think is really powerful, where after all the Batsuits have been destroyed, the Batcave has been ruined, Robin has run away, and Riddler and Two-Face have captured Dr. Meridian. He takes Alfred down into the cave. Well, actually, Alfred takes him down with flashlights, and he tells him, "Your nightmares are in there." And he tells Batman, "This is where you fell. This is where you fell all those years ago. You discovered the Batcave. And this journal with your father's entry in it that you think incriminates you as the reason they're dead, it's in there. You need to go, you need to see it, you need to confront the demon you saw that night, and only then will you be free." So he tells Bruce, "I fear you will spend the rest of your life fleeing." He does this really powerful little quiver in his voice that just reinforces, "Yes, Bruce, I love you. I've raised you since you were a child, since you were left orphaned. I've done my best, but if you're going to like really grow up, even now, you need to do this on your own. So Bruce goes into the cave and he finds this red journal that his father kept. And that's where he sees the entry. Bruce insists on seeing a movie tonight. And then under it, Martha and I want to see Zorro. Bruce's cartoons will have to wait until next week. Now, unfortunately, not even in this edit are there actual references. Are there really clear references anywhere else in the movie to that scene, to this suggestion of survivor's guilt? But you just see him start panting really heavily, like he's going to sob. And he just keeps muttering, "Not my fault. Not my fault." And it's wonderful because then you see this distorted vision of a giant demonic bat coming towards him. And it comes closer, and there's parts of this cut in the final cut, this image of a bat floating towards him. But here we see what it actually is. It's a man demon. It's Man Bat, basically. And Man Bat comes and stands in front of him, slightly like a head taller than him, holds its arms out, and Batman, with a tear running down his face, Bruce Wayne holds up his arms to match the bat. And that's when we realize the bat is Batman. And Batman died. Batman was born when his parents died. Yeah, I'm tired. But Batman was born when Bruce's parents died, when he fell into that hole, when he was lost, confused, again, lowest point of his life, and he saw the bat, and that's when the bat was born. So he comes out of the cave, and Alfred's waiting on him. He looks concerned as always, and he says, "Master Bruce." But then Bruce turns and corrects him. "I'm Batman, Alfred. I'm Batman." And then the rest of the movie happens basically normally. And then after the main confrontation is over, after Enigma is in Arkham and Two-Face is dead with his whole coin thing, here's what happens. Meridian comes out of Arkham, finds Bruce and Alfred waiting. And here's what happens. They have the whole kiss. You know, the Hollywood movie always has to end with a kiss because sex sells, I guess. I mean, Nicole Kidman was very beautiful, still very beautiful person. That's sex appeal. And I mean, in his day, Val Kilmer, I guess. So there's that. And they really had good chemistry, but that's not going to go anywhere. So then there's another piece of footage that didn't make it to the final cut, where after that, Alfred drives Dr. Meridian home, and she asks him, "Doesn't it ever end?" She, of course, is talking about Bruce, who has to leave because he sees the bat signal. He has to go to it. He has a partner now, but he is still Batman. He still has to do this thing where he goes out and he tortures himself every night, finding people to beat up to inflict pain that he feels, and in turn feel the pain of the people he's hurting. Even if it's for a good cause, that's still ultimately what he's doing. And Chase, a psychologist, sees that, and even she is perplexed, because after all this time, she should know what makes Bruce tick. But she just doesn't, so she has to ask, "Does it ever end?" And Alfred just smiles sadly in the rearview mirror, and he says, "No, Dr. Meridian, not in this lifetime." Of course, Bruce has turned himself into this sort of binary person with like his true self somewhere in the middle. Bruce Wayne and Batman have to coexist, and they both have to coexist Okay, I'm gonna spoil it. The title of Batman Forever, yeah, it's not just like a celebration or something generic like Batman or Batman Returns or The Dark Knight, or I guess even Batman Begins or The Dark Knight Rises, which are both a little more significant, but I think this one takes the cake for most significant Batman title ever. Batman Forever, because Bruce Wayne has to be Batman forever. That is the answer to Dr. Meridian's question. It never ends. Not in this lifetime. Bruce Wayne must be Batman forever. No matter what the reason. He has to be Batman forever. So, yeah. We should have had that film. The cut footage should have been kept in the final cut. It should have gotten the same treatment as everything else, because there's also other little quips, I guess, like where Riddler scrambles Batman's GPS and instead points him to like this salon where everyone gives him a look, and then this one lady with scissors just comes up and says, "A little off the ears, Batman?" And the whole salon laughs, and he just like slowly walks out, I think. I just saw the virtual work print again, but my memory is not great. What can I say? So that's what that is. I do have a problem with the virtual work print, though. Other than the quality difference between the clips, even when they're put through the vintage filter, which I really like, and I appreciate that level of effort. But here's the thing. You could have kept all the silly stuff in, too. Because you're kind of proving or disproving the movie's point, I guess, when you're saying that the serious parts and the silly parts can't coexist. Bruce Wayne and Batman can coexist. Two-Face and Harvey Dent should have coexisted, but one gave in to the other. And that's what you're trying to do to this film. You're trying to cut out the parts you don't like, and it's... I mean, art is art. Do whatever you want with it. I stressed that in my Godzilla video, but like... You want to be true to the art you are creating. You want to fulfill Joel Schumacher and company's original vision. Keep the silliness. Keep the seriousness. Keep them together. Let them coexist. And then it really can be exactly what it was meant to be. A sort of movie with a little bit for everyone. And let me tell you, there is a lot going on. There really is something for everyone in Batman Forever, I guess. Maybe I'm just too narrow-minded to realize that there are audiences that don't want Batman Forever. They want something else, maybe an end to Batman's story, but I think it could have ended here. He's found his, I guess, true reason to be Batman. He has his sidekick who can carry on after he decides, I guess, maybe it's time to quit. Maybe I could settle down with this doctor who knows who I am and helps. Because if you noticed, Batman actually doesn't have much luck with women in these 4 films. He has like one love interest in every movie, and let's see, Vicky Vale just kind of happened. Wasn't really, I guess, too much of a love interest at all, because both Batman and Bruce Wayne were too distant. And then Catwoman, she's a lover, but she's also an enemy. She is his villain. And Dr. Meridian, who, if you caught that, Meridian, middle, balance, coexistence. She is his lifeline, his key to unlocking his best self, and that's lost by Batman and Robin, which I guess just proves the point that no, it doesn't ever end. But like, what I'm saying here is that Batman Forever is amazing. I loved it as a kid. I still really enjoy it, and just wish maybe that's probably why I'm doing this podcast. I wish that someone would understand it in the way that I do, would see, I guess, kind of what I see, the silliness and the seriousness, and how they can go together and be wonderful, be one of the best Batman stories ever told, certainly the best put to film, considering it has to compete with Tim Burton's murder bat, Christopher Nolan's like stoic Batman with the really easy to mock voice, Ben Affleck's Batman, who is a killer and just doesn't have a groundwork as an individual that suits him in the Justice League. There's no, I guess, weight that could be there if, say, this Batman from Batman Forever were to later join the Justice League. It's not the same weight. And I guess, unfortunately, I don't have much experience with the animated series other than, like, Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, which I've also seen a number of times, but I don't have as much to say about it as I do Batman Forever. So, yeah. As I said before, Batman Forever is a wonderful movie, and I'm doing this so I can share this enjoyment I have and this knowledge I have of what this movie is and what it could have been and what it should have been. And hopefully, if you ever watch it, that'll increase your appreciation for Batman as a character, Joel Schumacher as a director, just any of it, you know? Okay, I'm gonna check in here and say that it is 11:18 right now. My roommate, he's in his little, like, room. He's in his room. I hope he's asleep and I didn't keep him up, but he said the noise hasn't bothered him before, so I think we're good. I am Isaac. This is Comics Crackheadery. I think I covered everything I wanted to talk about. I'm pretty sure, but I can't be 100%. So I'm going to call it good here, and then, yeah. Toodles.